town in the northeast of England, which is so far away from the Delta and the Mississippi and all of that thing. And I'm listen there. I am listen. Paul Rodgers had one of rock's most powerful voices and an equally strong set of beliefs about what rock music should represent. Music. Oh yeah. The British blues rock warrior who fronted Free and Bad Company believed that real music came from the heart, not from market research. And he watched with growing worry as bands left their musical roots for money. Back and forth, back and forth. Japan. In Japan, and I think Rolling Stone just had you in their top 50 or whatever that was. Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Offstage Tales, where today we're exploring the traditional values of Paul Rodgers and the 6 bands that broke his sacred musical beliefs. The singer behind classics like All Right Now and Can't Get Enough was famous for his strong commitment to blues rock purity and his open disgust for artists who betrayed those roots. Rock and roll was born from real pain and real joy, Rodgers once said during a 1979 interview. When you take that away and replace it with formula, you're not making music anymore. You're making a product. Those words became his battle cry against every band he saw selling out their artistic soul. From blues betrayals to pop transformations, Rodgers' fights with these groups weren't just about different musical directions. They were about basic disagreements over whether music should serve business or conscience. These weren't simple style preferences, but moral fights to preserve rock's real spirit. So, prepare for some righteous musical anger from a man who never forgot where rock came from. 6. Journey. Starting our countdown at number 6 is Rodgers' disappointment with musical evolution. Journey alone. Music. His frustration with the San Francisco rockers wasn't about their talent. And here is, it's really a thrill for me as well because I so believe in what they're doing. It was about watching their change from adventurous progressive musicians into formulaic arena rock ballad makers who left artistic exploration for radio-friendly predictability. The disappointment reportedly grew throughout the late 1970s when Journey was shifting from their experimental beginnings toward mainstream appeal. According to former Columbia Records executive Walter Yetnikoff, Rodgers watched their change with increasing disappointment, telling him, Journey started as musical explorers and ended up as jukebox makers. They traded their creative compass for a calculator and lost everything that made them special. What made Rodgers sad wasn't their commercial success, but their artistic giving up. While Rodgers had kept his blues rock foundation throughout his career, changes from Free to Bad Company, Journey was achieving platinum success through what Rodgers reportedly called demographic pandering and songs designed by committee to offend absolutely nobody and inspire even fewer. Music should challenge both the artist and the audience, Rodgers told Rock Scene in 1981, defending his belief that creative growth required risk-taking rather than safety-seeking. The philosophical distance became obvious when Journey's power ballads began taking over radio programming. At a 1982 industry conference, witnesses claim Rodgers refused to participate in a panel about successful career reinvention, later telling organizers, I won't celebrate the death of artistic courage just because it sells more records. 5. Foreigner. At number 5, we encounter Rodgers' cultural betrayal battle. Foreigner. It's a temperament, but I'm not looking for Rodgers' cultural betrayal battle. Foreigner. His anger toward Mick Jones's transatlantic project wasn't about their musicianship. It was about watching a fellow British musician abandon the rich blues and rock traditions of their homeland to make slick American-style arena anthems designed purely for overseas market penetration. The cultural fight reportedly got worse during the late 1970s when Foreigner was taking over American radio with their polished approach. According to former Atlantic Records producer Jack Douglas, Rodgers viewed their success with visible unease, telling him, Mick has taken everything real about British rock and cleaned it up for American consumption. He's turned our musical heritage into an export commodity rather than keeping it as a living art form. What bothered Rodgers wasn't their achievements, but their methods. While Rodgers had carried British blues rock traditions forward through his various projects while keeping their emotional core, Foreigner was achieving massive success through what Rodgers reportedly called cultural tourism and British musicians pretending to be American because it pays better than staying true to your roots. The divide became permanent when Foreigner's approach influenced other British musicians to adopt similar American-friendly strategies. At a 1981 London music industry gathering, witnesses claim Rodgers avoided Foreigner's representatives entirely, later explaining to colleagues, I won't shake hands with people who've sold their musical passport for a bigger bank account. Jones seemed focused on international success rather than cultural preservation. But for Rodgers, Foreigner represented homeland betrayal. For Asia. Number 4 brings us to Rodgers' supergroup disappointment syndrome. Asia. Music. His contempt for the progressive rock all-stars wasn't about their individual reputations. It was about watching exceptionally talented musicians from Yes, King Crimson and ELP waste their collective genius on uninspired corporate-friendly material that insulted their previous artistic achievements. Music, it's just music goes through your mind at that point. Nothing else. Nothing else. There's no room for anything else. It's moving too quickly and you've got to stay on it. The disappointment reportedly peaked in 1982 when Asia's debut album achieved massive commercial success despite what many considered creative mediocrity. According to former Geffen Records executive John Kolodner, Rodgers analyzed their approach with growing disgust, telling him, "These are some of the most innovative musicians in rock history, and they're choosing to make elevator music. It's like watching Picasso decide to paint house numbers instead of masterpieces." What shocked Rodgers wasn't their sales figures, but their artistic choices. While Rodgers had always pushed himself to grow creatively within his blues rock framework, Asia was achieving platinum status through what Rodgers reportedly called lowest common denominator rock, and supergroup talent wasted on subgroup ambitions. The disappointment became personal when Asia's success encouraged other veteran musicians to form similar commercially minded supergroups. At a 1983 recording industry event, witnesses claim Rodgers questioned whether musical experience was becoming a liability, telling attendees, "If wisdom leads to compromise, maybe we're better off staying naive and hungry." Asia seemed satisfied with their streamlined approach rather than concerned with progressive expectations. But for Rodgers, Asia represented squandered greatness. 3. REO Speedwagon. Number 3 reveals Rodgers' most regional prejudice. REO Speedwagon. His mockery of the Illinois rockers wasn't about their Midwest origins. It was about watching them transform from credible hard rock performers into soft rock specialists who epitomized everything Rodgers believed was destroying American rock's backbone and credibility. The contempt reportedly crystallized during the early 1980s when REO Speedwagon's ballad-heavy approach was taking over FM radio. According to former Epic Records executive Ron Alexenberg, Rodgers studied their change with visible scorn, telling him, "REO went from playing real rock music to making wedding reception soundtracks. They've turned American rock into background music for people who don't actually like rock." What disgusted Rodgers wasn't their heartland appeal, but their artistic timidity. While Rodgers had built his career on powerful, emotionally direct rock that demanded listener attention, REO Speedwagon was achieving mainstream acceptance through what Rodgers reportedly called neutered rock, and music so inoffensive it might as well be instrumental wallpaper. "Rock should grab you by the throat, not pat you on the head," Rodgers told Cream magazine in 1982, defending his belief that authentic rock required emotional intensity rather than comfortable familiarity. The cultural gap became unbridgeable when REO's approach began representing American rock to international audiences. At a 1983 overseas music festival, witnesses claimed Rodgers expressed embarrassment about sharing stages with such acts, later telling his band, "When foreigners think this represents American rock power, we've lost something essential about what made this music dangerous." 2. Chicago. At number 2, we discover Rodgers' most profound artistic betrayal, Chicago. His fury toward the horn-driven innovators wasn't about their jazz influences. It was about watching them completely abandon their groundbreaking rock-jazz fusion experiments to become adult contemporary ballad specialists who destroyed their own revolutionary legacy. So much. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us. And by the way, congratulations. Apparently, you did what Tony Bennett did and you found the fountain of a heartbreak reportedly reached its peak during the late 1970s when Chicago was achieving renewed commercial success with syrupy love songs. According to former Columbia Records producer James William Guercio, Rodgers followed their career path with growing anguish, telling him, "Chicago created something genuinely new in rock music, then threw it all away to become a Las Vegas lounge act. They had musical lightning in a bottle and chose to pour it down the drain." What devastated Rodgers wasn't their popularity, but their regression. While Rodgers had always sought to expand his musical boundaries within his established framework, Chicago was achieving chart dominance through what Rodgers reportedly called artistic suicide, and the conscious decision to become less than what you once were. The philosophical wound became permanent when Chicago's ballad success influenced other innovative bands to simplify their approaches. At a 1980 jazz rock festival, witnesses claim Rodgers refused to appear on the same bill as Chicago, later explaining to promoters, "I won't celebrate the death of musical ambition, even if it pays well." Chicago seemed satisfied with their commercial renaissance rather than mourning their experimental period. But for Rodgers, Chicago represented the ultimate artistic tragedy. One Fleetwood Mac. And finally, at number 1, we reach the most devastating revelation of all, Fleetwood Mac. Yes, the British blues legends reportedly earned Paul Rodgers' ultimate rage in what became the most painful betrayal of musical heritage in rock history. And it was way out of the box for yeah. Looked at me like, okay. The devastation reportedly began in the mid-1970s when Fleetwood Mac completely abandoned their blues foundation for California pop success. According to former Warner Brothers executive M.O. Austin, Rodgers watched their transformation with visible anguish, telling him, Fleetwood Mac was one of Britain's greatest blues bands, and they've turned themselves into American pop stars. They've committed cultural suicide and called it evolution. What shattered Rodgers wasn't their commercial triumph, but their heritage abandonment. While Rodgers had spent his entire career honoring and extending British blues traditions through modern applications, Fleetwood Mac was achieving unprecedented success through what Rodgers reportedly called complete cultural amnesia and the deliberate destruction of everything that made them musically important. The betrayal became complete when rumors dominated worldwide charts while erasing all traces of their blues origins. At a 1977 industry celebration, witnesses claim Rodgers confronted Mick Fleetwood directly, allegedly saying, "You've taken Peter Green's legacy and turned it into elevator music." Some betrayals are unforgivable. Music journalist Nick Kent reported that Rodgers later told him, "Fleetwood Mac represents everything that's wrong with the music industry. Bands willing to erase their own history if it means bigger paychecks." Fleetwood seemed defensive about their artistic evolution rather than apologetic about their blues abandonment. But for Rodgers, Fleetwood Mac represented the ultimate musical sin, deliberately destroying their authentic heritage to manufacture artificial commercial appeal that insulted everything their previous music had represented. So, there you have it. Even blues rock warriors can harbor deep wounds about musical betrayal. Was Paul Rodgers defending authentic traditions or just resisting natural evolution? Which band's transformation disappointed you most? Subscribe for more rock heritage battles and share your musical values below.